They say technology makes our lives easier. For work, to learn, to travel, to communicate. But there are things that machines cannot yet do. Things as important as engaging, putting themselves in your shoes, having intuition, or making intelligent decisions. In an increasingly technological world, we need professionals who provide intelligent solutions based on their know-how. Because there are things that technology cannot yet do for you. The human tech.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, thank you very much for joining us today on the 17th of February. Today, we have the pleasure to have two very important lawyers. Long time no see, Mr. Davis from Almeria. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Hello, Ignacio. Hello, Pedro. And hello, everyone.
Then on the other side of Spain, we have Pedro Heredia. Hello, Pedro. Good afternoon.
Hello, Ignacio. Hello, Michael. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Okay, well, today we're going to talk. It's nice to have you both here. And we considered that it was very important to talk about the topic of buying a property in Spain. Today, we're going to talk about buying versus renting. And obviously, for those who are trying to relocate into Spain. I know you've been practicing already over 20, 25 years, Michael. Over 20 years already, and I know you have a lot of experience on people trying to relocate into Spain. And one of the most important things for them is to find a property and try to either relocate, renting, and then probably buy. Okay. Now, Michael, I know you've been dealing with a lot of conveyancing all through your career, and I would like to speak to the audience and give them few tips about buying a property in Spain from a safe way. So over to you, Michael.
Okay, well, hello, everyone. So, yes, my name is Michael Davis, and I've been in practice for just 30 years now. Unfortunately, because I'm very old. So I've been in practice for 30 years, and I work mainly in the Andalucía region. For those of that don't know, Pedro and Ignacio up in the Valencia region. I'm down in Andalucía, so basically on the Costa del Sol and Almeria. So let me just go through the sort of the basics. How long have I got, Ignacio?
I think if you do 10 minutes and then Pedro
Okay.
will have another 10 minutes and then we can interact. I will ask the audience, Michael, before you start kicking in, if they can put in the chat their questions and tell us where they're contacting us from, so everybody could be very active here in this seminar. Okay.
Okay, so let me give you sort of an overall view of just basic recommendations regarding the buying process, so you buy a property safely. So the first thing is to say that it's perfectly possible to buy a property safely in Spain. So the sort of things that I would recommend is one is choose carefully where it is that you want to buy in Spain and maybe contemplate even renting before you buy. There are 17 regions of Spain. And even though from far away it may look like Spain is all the same, it's not. The regions are very different and the experiences were very different. Spain's a fantastic place to buy. All regions are excellent, but depending on what you like, what your priorities are, you may like one region more over the other. So I definitely study that. It's not something for lawyers maybe, but just there's plenty of information online to get a feel for the different regions. So once you've found the region where you buy and you sort of, narrowed it down to, at least a province or an area that you like, one of the first things that I would line up if you're going to seriously interested in buying a property is line up a lawyer in your area to have ready for when you buy the property, because otherwise things start moving very quickly once you've found one, because you don't want to miss out and lose it once you've found it, etc. The pressure builds up from the estate agent. So I'd say do a bit of homework on finding a lawyer. So nowadays we're all spoilt for choice, if you like, because unlike when I started almost 30 years ago, where there wasn't that much of a choice regarding English-speaking lawyers along the coasts, but now there are plenty of very good lawyers. I come across good, honest, English-speaking lawyers all the time, and there are plenty of them now. So do your homework, look around. There's no excuse to not have a meeting with them, at least over Zoom if you can't meet them in the office. Make sure it's somebody that you feel that you can work with. Because remember, at the end of the day, when you buy in Spain, you want somebody that can help you with the purchase itself, but also with the other associated matters like tax matters, making a Spanish will, and obviously possibly one day in the future, probate or selling. So you want to make sure they've got more or less everything covered, or they have someone that they deal with, maybe to deal with their accounts separately, but someone that deals with a bit of everything. And most importantly is that by finding him in advance, you'll be making sure that he is a 100% independent. Because one of the big mistakes that we have seen over the years is people simply choosing the lawyer recommended by the estate agent. You don't want to do that. It's not a good idea. I mean, I know that lots of estate agents recommend us, for example, but if someone, you go into the estate agent that's selling your property, I would recommend Michael Davis to handle this. That's not a good idea. I mean, if they give you a list of 10 and you make your own choice, well, that sounds a bit better. But you just don't want them to push you into a specific lawyer, because we're here as an insurance. So 99% of the cases, everything will be in good order. But you're basically paying us so that if something is wrong, we point it out and don't allow you to purchase. And it may be difficult for a lawyer that's receiving 99% of their work from a given estate agent. So if an estate agent recommends someone, it doesn't mean that he's bad. He may be very good, but it's just not a good way to choose the lawyer. So go online, ask around wherever you're going to buy, ask the local bank manager, ask other people, look online, speak to the British consulate or the US consulate, and they'll all be able to probably point you in the right direction. So once you've found a property that you like, the normal thing in Spain, at least down here on the Costa del Sol, similar up in the Valencia region, is they're going to ask you for a small reservation to take the property off the market. That's quite usual. Normally it's €3,000. You put it down, you introduce the estate agent to your lawyer that you've lined up, and the lawyer will start looking at all the documentation. He will also start organizing a power of attorney to be able to purchase property in Spain for you. He will also start talking to you about opening up a Spanish bank account that you will need, which again, he can do with the power of attorney, but you may have a choice regarding what bank you want him to use. So he'll set up the power of attorney, he'll start your bank account, and he'll request something for you called an NIE, which is a Spanish tax number. This is not a residencia. This is just a tax number that you need to purchase the property. Later on, you can choose to become a resident or not, which is a complete different thing. It's not something else you have to think about after you've purchased the property. So basically, your lawyer will go through things and he'll move towards a 10% deposit contract. I'm talking about second-hand properties now, and I'll briefly talk about new properties under construction at the end. So you'll move towards a 10% deposit contract, which basically will set all the conditions of the transaction. So once you've paid the 10% deposit, that will set a completion date, which would normally be anywhere between sort of 2 months, well, between 1 month at the earliest and maybe 4 months at the latest. That would sort of be the reasonable timescale for a completion. But you can complete very quickly in Spain if you want to. So when you get to the completion, by that time, your lawyer will already have opened up a bank account in your name, local to where the property is. He'll have requested your Spanish tax numbers, your NIE numbers, and he'll have his power of attorney in place to handle the purchase for you. So you'll be sending all the money over to your new account in Spain, and he will take care of handling the transaction. By then, hopefully, he would have spoken to you about all the taxes and fees to expect on the purchase. In fact, what I recommend with this is that right at the beginning, before you start things, you ask him what his fees are going to be. So here in Andalusia, where transfer tax on second-hand properties is 7%, all the taxes and fees come around to the 10% mark. Up in the Valencia region, it may be a little bit more because their transfer tax is 10% instead of ours. Is it still 10% up in the Valencia region, Ignacio?
Yes,
10%.
actually, they are changing. I don't know whether Pedro could confirm. Very soon into 9%, isn't it, Pedro? For next spot, yes, Michael, roughly.
Yeah, so in
in
Andalusia, think around 10%. In the Valencia region, think about 12, 13%. And basically, I mean, what you've got is you've got a notary fee, a registrar fee, a transfer tax, a solicitor's fee, a fee for the NIE numbers, So the one that basically the only variable that you need to talk to your solicitor about is what he's going to charge. So most lawyers charge around the 1% plus VAT mark. Many solicitors do have minimum fees for low value properties, and they do sort of don't maybe not charge the full 1% if they're very expensive properties. I mean, in my case, we have a minimum fee of €3,500 plus VAT. So on properties below 350, we'd be charging slightly more than 1%. So that's where roughly around the 1% plus VAT. If you have someone that charges much less, I don't think that would they're not probably the mainstream lawyers. If they charge much more than that, they're sort of, they're charging above the average. So we're going to, I mean, not every solicitor offers exactly the same service. So that's for you to sort of ask around on that. So normally at the moment of right at the beginning, he'll have requested a retainer. When we do the completion, he'll move all the money into his client account to pay all these different taxes and fees. He'll pay them all for you. And basically about 2 months after, when he's finalized everything, he'll give you your title deeds and all the different invoices for all the money they pay on it. You want to make sure when you hire your lawyer that you also either through him or somebody that he can introduce to, that somebody takes care of the electricity, the water, the rates, the rubbish, and the community of owners, and sets them all up by direct debit. Lawyers in general don't like doing this because it's very time consuming, but it's something you do need to make sure that he's going to cover for you, because otherwise it's like loose ends that will end up giving you a lot of headaches. Also, I would always recommend that if you're a foreigner from whatever country, that once you've purchased the property in Spain, you make Spanish wills to cover your Spanish estates. You can read online why that's recommendable, but it's 100% recommendable that you make a Spanish will to cover the Spanish assets. So if you buy, and that's basically it in a nutshell. So if you buy a new property that's under construction, everything is quite similar, except for instead of paying transfer tax at 7%, you pay 10% VAT instead of the transfer tax, and you pay document tax on top, which in Andalusia is 1.2, in the Valencia region is 1.5. But basically, on new properties, the taxation in Andalusia and in the Valencia region is almost exactly the same, 0.3% difference. So that's sort of it in a nutshell, I'd say, for the purchase. So if you're buying under construction, the one thing that you must always do is make sure that your lawyer is requesting bank guarantees on all the stage payments each time they're being paid. That basically covers you for if the builder went bust or something happened, you've always got your money insured. It's obligatory in Spain to issue these policies on the money that you pay over, but your solicitor needs to chase up to make sure that each time you make a payment, you actually get the certificate saying that that money is covered. So after you've purchased the property in Spain, you need to think about whether you're going to become a tax resident, not become a tax resident. If you're not from the EU, what type of visa requirement you're going to have to stay here longer or not. Basically, the taxation system is very different whether you remain a non-resident or whether you become a tax resident in Spain. We've got with us today Pedro, who's, I think, one of the best experts on taxation for non-residents in Spain, or from people from other countries that become residents in Spain and have got the sort of their tax situation at home and taxation over here. So I think Pedro's going to go through all the business of the taxation and perhaps the visas as well. Because in the old days we didn't have, all British people didn't have this visa issue, but now obviously this visa issue has become a very important part of conveyancing in Spain, because of all the British pedroing now some kind of visa if they're going to stay in Spain. So I think that's just the overview, Ignacio. I don't know if you want any more detail or whether Pedro can take over with all the.
Yeah, we're going to jump on to Pedro now. But Michael, I'm sure you can leave your details here in the chat, and there are a lot of questions that we could start selecting and answering after Pedro does his presentation about buying versus renting, relocating into Spain. Pedro, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Ignacio. Fantastic, Michael. Thank you very much for the fantastic explanation. And obviously, whenever someone is going to make an investment to relocate, obviously we have experience that, well, do we buy or do we rent? It's obviously something that a decision on buying a property in Spain or anywhere in the world at the end is a big decision. At the end is a important investment. Probably, as it says, that is one of the most important investments that you do. Is going to be the place that you're going to live. So you have to be pretty sure that you have seen the area, the place, the neighborhood. You have seen many properties, and at the end to decide to invest. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people that around the world are investing in Spain and buying properties in Spain. And important also, as Michael said, it's that you buy with, if obviously is recommended, with an independent lawyer. Why is that? Because at the end, during the transaction, and during the position of buying a property, maybe you want a mortgage, maybe you have some payments to be done. Maybe, I mean, there are circumstances that obligates you in order to have like a representative person in order to represent you to the Spanish agent, to the seller lawyer, but at the end also to be sure that whatever is going to be come through to you at the end, the security of what you're buying is 100% perfect. Is you at the end you buy with a peace of mind, and the property is duly safe. It make a due diligence is an obligation, something that is important in terms of well, giving you peace of mind. And as he said, and Michael said, with our independent lawyer, that even though we are recommended with many agents as well, but obviously we act with independent issue. We have had some situations where we have said to the clients not to buy. We say, man, we see that this is a risk situation, and we explain why. We have reports from planning law, we have reports from different registries, and at the end we advise that this is not going to be in the future, present and future, a risk investment. And we just say to the client, don't buy this. There are plenty of properties. You go and take to another one. And well, many clients that come, for example, from US, they first start renting, and I think it's also a good situation to rent, to see the area, the neighborhood, and then rent. Obviously, we always say, I mean, if you find a fantastic property with a fantastic price and it's obviously safe, go ahead. And if not, well, rent until you find it. You need to find and be sure where you are. It's been explained about the process of buying a property, resale, new, about taxes, and renting a property. Obviously, at the end, is something that you just pay the fee. There are some obviously rules about renting as a tenant, but at the end, your obligation is about paying your monthly rental, or I mean the amount of fees that you have set in during the year. It's important that whenever you make any you come to Spain, obviously the immigration office may say, well, where are you going to live? Are you going to live in a Airbnb property, or you're going to live in a property for 3 months? There are some Spanish consulates that they want to see like a long-term contract or 1 year. Some of them are a little bit flexible on this, but obviously something that in terms of moving to Spain, the immigration office, we need to show to the immigration office that you have a place to live in Spain. That's important. About taxes. Well, once you become resident, I can see that there's some questions about taxes from UK, and we will be reading all the questions in a few minutes. But obviously, when you become tax resident is whenever you need to declare your worldwide income the following year. Let's put an example. Right now, someone becomes resident this month, February. It is a presumption that this year, 2026, is going to be tax resident. So next year, 2027, we'll have to declare worldwide income, not just in Spain, all the world income, from the 1st of January 2026 to the 31st of December 2026. So next year, 2027, between April and June, needs to declare whatever income someone who is resident in Spain got from 1st of January to 31st of December 2026. Okay, that's important. So according to the double taxation treaties, according to the double taxation treaty between Spain, UK, Spain, US, Spain, Canada, and in some countries. So, and according to that, there are normally most of the income is going to be declared and paid in Spain. And sometimes there is an agreement where there are some dividends or some interests are hold 10%, 15% in the origin country, and the rest is paid in Spain. Maybe until it's like 10 or 15% is paid, for example, in the US, and the rest until 19 is paid in Spain. So this 4% or 9 or 4% depends is paid in Spain, in order to avoid double taxation. So important to, whenever someone relocates, first, obviously the entrance door is immigration, is compulsory. Then check what is going to be your situation about taxes. What will be your tax return whenever you become tax resident, and when are you going to become tax resident? And that's another question, another answer. I think is someone is asking about, well, I'm selling my property in my home country, I'm going to move to Spain, and then I'm going to buy a property in Spain. Well, take care about that situation, because you may enter a situation where if you are tax resident in Spain this year, for example, the example I said, in February you come to Spain, but maybe last month in January you sold your property in Canada. Well, this year you are tax resident, then you have to report to tax office in Spain about the selling of your property in Canada, even though in Canada maybe it's tax-free. And you have to report purchase price plus costs that you have in the property, and also you have to report selling price. So you will have a net amount, will be a profit, a gain, and then you have to pay a capital gain tax. Normally it's a gain with properties. And whenever you become resident, it's also compulsory that you need to show to the Spanish authorities the following year from the first tax year, you need to inform about your assets worldwide, which is over 50,000 euros. This is very a simple explanation, but it's like 3 pillars. One pillar, for example, is bank accounts outside Spain. If altogether is more than 50,000 euros, then you need to report them, inform about those bank accounts, even though it's £1, €1, $1, it doesn't matter. At least all of them together is more than 50,000 euros. Or properties, real estate, or investments. Each pillar is independent, and if you have more than 50,000 euros value at the end of a year, then the following year, you need to report that. But what if I become resident, let's say, in September, in October? Well, from 1st of July, which is half of the year, and then it's obviously less, and then will be less than 183 days. Well, this year, if you become resident this year and you are not more than 183 days in Spain, then you are not tax resident. So you become resident in Spain, but this year, 2026, you are non-resident for tax purposes. So this year, there is nothing to report into the Spanish tax office about 2026 unless you have bought a property, and just because owning a property, you need to declare, we call it non-resident tax. It's not too much tax, it's something not to worry, but something that you need to report. And we obviously recommend to do it because it shows that you are really non-resident for tax purposes for 2026. So it's important to, firstly, the entrance door, immigration, obviously the visa, what you need to do. I mean, obviously, you don't need the NI number, it will be given to that, but if you buy a property or you have already bought a property, if you sell a property in your home country and then you buy another one, what happens with your investments outside of Spain, you need to bring them or not. I mean, those things you need to check, and you need to make some simulations to check the scenario that you're going to enter. Then the investment on the property or maybe rental. And sometimes also we have, Ignacio, many families, they say, well, I want to bring also my employee and my employment. I'm an employee of a company, or I want to bring, I'm a self-employment, I want to start as a self-employment in Spain, or I want to bring my company into a domicile in Spain. About accountancy and back taxes, all this obviously needs to be checked, needs to be well planned, studied, because each family, each person has different issues. Even though there are some general rules and general information that we can give, is compulsory to make before you become resident in Spain, tax resident in Spain, to plan, to make a plan, estate planning and tax planning.
Okay, Pedro. Well, thank you very much. Actually, as Pedro stated, If you decide to come over to Spain, you might be thinking about first the immigration side, whether you have all documents in order. Then, secondly, as you stated, you might be end up with a rental contract or short-term rental until you decide to buy. And then after that, when you think is the right property for you, then enter into the relationship with the vendor or developer, which is what Michael has discussed. We did share with you some information here for you to read. You could go through the blog as well about buying property in Spain. But as stated, very important two things. One, having an independent lawyer to work for you and on your behalf and defend solely your interest. I know a lot of state agents might recommend you their own lawyer. As many times it was stated here, it doesn't mean that the lawyer is not a good lawyer, but at the end of the day, you need to make sure he is representing you and looking forward to your best interest. Okay, you shouldn't have any conflict of interest here. And on top of that, if you're buying an off-plan property, you should be asking and requesting the bank guarantees once you pay. We do not recommend you to do stage payments without protection. Okay, so even when you do the reservation contract, the 3,000, the 5,000 is okay if you still need to do, but don't pay any further without checking with the lawyer. Okay, and now renting, it wouldn't be an issue here. As Pedro stated, if you do long-term rental, you could still use it in your income tax return here in Spain as well. If you do short-term, probably you don't need to disclose it. But nevertheless, we're not talking about big allowance. It depends on your income from the whole year, and is not very much. The efficiency from a tax point of view, it might be irrelevant from a consumer's point of view. So probably is irrelevant, and you're free to rent any property is in the market. Okay, I think we should start with the questions, Michael, that you have selected, and then Pedro, and we will start with the interaction between each other here because we're getting a lot of questions. Okay, so I mean, obviously, this seminar is not meant to only talk about taxation. I know there are a lot of questions about taxes. We could help you with tax planning before relocating to Spain, providing you advice how much, as Pedro stated, would it work from an income tax point of view before you even make any move, or even when you make a move as well. Okay, just bear in mind, we normally recommend, if possible, if you're relocating to Spain, sell it before you come into Spain. That doesn't mean that you have to do it. It's not compulsory, obviously, and it's not something that is a must, but it helps because if you come with money as a non-tax resident, it's much easier from a tax point of view. Just bear in mind that tax office are always looking and asking questions. And once the money goes through your Spanish bank account and you do the 720 and you disclose the information, you give the opportunity to give and ask questions to you. Okay. So for peace of mind, I will encourage you to do planning. And I think it's worth it. In the long run, it's always cheap and is stress-free. Okay, Michael, would you like to start answering the one you have selected?
Yep.
And then we'll pass it on to Pedro. Okay.
Okay, so there's one client here that's asked a typical question that we get quite a lot, and that is Jacqueline from the States, who's saying that once she's purchased a property in Spain, does she need to have a separate will in Spain or not? So as basically an inheritance lawyer, because that's what my main line of business is, without any doubt whatsoever, you should make a will if you own any assets in Spain, with the bank accounts, property thing. And the best thing to do is to have one will in each country where you have assets. It's much cheaper than having to convalidate wills from other countries. There can be a lot of delays. It may not be tax efficient. So definitely one will in each country. And somebody else asking here, another question that we've all seen before, is somebody's concerned about what happens with capital gain. They're going to sell their property in Canada, and they're wondering what happens with capital gains tax in Spain, because the property is free of capital gains tax over in Canada. Well, we've always recommended on these webinars before that what you want to do is sell the property in Canada before you become a tax resident in Spain, because once you become a tax resident in Spain, you have to pay tax on worldwide income, including capital gains tax. So you could be in a situation where you don't have capital gains tax to pay over there, but you have it over here if you already have when you're going to sell.
Maybe sometimes also, Michael, and obviously we are talking in general, but in this case that we also explain, in case that the person comes to Spain, is over 65 and has been living in the property more than 3 years, it's a main home. The concept to be a main home in Spain is just to live in the property at least 3 years or more. And then if you are over 65 and you've been living in the property 3 years and you sell it, there's no exemption. There's no capital gains tax. There's no problem with that. But in general, that needs to be those two things, more than 65.
Because the trouble is here is that if she's living in her main home in Canada, she moves over here, becomes a resident in here, and later sells her property over there, she may, if she's already a resident here, it's not her main home any longer.
Yeah, well, there's a period of time. Obviously, we are entering in a little bit more accurate, but there's a period of time, and when does the person loses the concept of main home? For example, now, as you said, it can happen sometimes that people sell the property and then they come, but sometimes they come and they still haven't sold the property. Well, the period of time that the tax office and its criteria and is ruled in this case is 2 years. So someone will be able, in this case from Canada, move to Spain, is over 65 years old, and after 2 years without selling the property, that property loses the concept of permanent home. So after 2 years, the property has not been sold. Even whenever it's sold, will be capital gain tax. If after 2 years, the concept after 2 years.
So it's 2 years or one? No, 2 years, is it?
No, 2 years. And it happens sometimes also that someone sell it, it's a capital gain, but reinvest in the property. The reinvestment in Spain is also
the reinvestment is done within 2 years.
Reduces, and then you sell a property, and then you have another 2 years to reinvest at the same time.
But if it's the reinvestment and you do it the wrong way around, otherwise first you buy the one here and then later you sell, have you got 2 years or just 1 year?
Yes, 2 years. 2 years from whenever you start being resident in Spain. 2 years from whenever you start, because you become resident and you are not resident anymore in that country, and obviously that property is not anymore your main home, but it's like a delayment. It's like 2 years. That property is still, in a concept of taxes, it still is like your main home in tax purposes. So whenever you sell it, you can sell it from the following 2 years, and whenever you sell it that date, it counts another 2 years from that date. It counts another 2 years to reinvest. Just in these cases, in case that you need to reduce or exempt, reduce the reinvestment. If you are over 65 and you've been living in that property more than 3 years, there is no need to reinvest, or there is no need to apply for this.
Okay, if we're not claiming the over 65 exemption though, and we do actually need the reinvestment, and we do it in reverse. In other words, first we buy the one here and then we sell the one in Canada. Do we have to prove that then the money from that sale is going into this purchase that you've already done? In other words, do you have to do a mortgage on it and then use the money from the sale to reduce the size of the mortgage to prove that there is actually, in fact, a reinvestment or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's right. And sometimes it needs to be, I mean, the property that you bought and included in this period is being bought with a mortgage, but you need to sell the other one after, as you said. Is that the case? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so if you're doing it in reverse, instead of claiming the reinvestment of I sell one property and I reinvest within 2 years, exceptionally, I know you can do it in reverse. In other words, we buy the property that we're buying Canada first, and then we've got, I thought it was 1 year, but you mentioned it's 2 years to sell the other one. But because the exemption is based on a reinvestment, do we have to, so that we can prove that we're using the money from the sale to put into this new property that we've already bought? Do we have to take a mortgage on it first and then cancel mortgage?
Cancel it, yes. In some way, there's this period of time. Well, Ignacio, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point, Michael. At the end of the day, we need to think from a further investigation. So, tax office might think that that money might be coming from income from work. So the best way to prove that money comes from the property is from the transaction. So I will keep that or every evidence up to 4 years. So you will prove, because Michael, you know how is a taxman, they will say, oh, that's income from work, you should pay that. And, no, I'm sorry, I sold this property. So if you have that, if you prove that that money comes from the other, you could claim their reinvestment. But I'm sure claiming their reinvestment on an income tax return that it makes you tax zero tax, I'm sure you're going to have an investigation. So I'm pretty sure. So I will put all this paperwork, Mike.
Yeah, as a disclaimer, I think basically it is important that when you're going to sell the property, in Canada, Australia, whatever, I think that you do actually sort of have a consultation with a lawyer, like yourselves, to talk about your specific case, because over the years we have seen people get this terribly wrong, and the difference in taxation could be very high. So it's just that it is difficult to explain the ins and outs of this, because there's a reinvestment, there's exemption over 65, there's that. So I think it does require. I would definitely. I mean, in our case, where we don't really deal with much tax, well, we deal with having to do with the taxation of inheritance, but not with normal taxation. I definitely recommend that people call experts like yourselves and do a consultation and explain exactly what their plan is, so that you can then look into it and make sure that that is not going to get them into trouble. I think that would be money well spent.
Yeah, Michael, just to keep it very simple, even though I'm going to share with the audience here an article that makes it very precise and difference on capital gain tax. If you sell a property, I mean, the number one thing and best thing is to become non-tax resident. So you are a no-tax resident. Say you come from Canada, no tax resident.
That's the safe way. That's the safe way.
One.
The other ones, they need
the
to
other one, and
look.
then if you're below 65, then obviously you need to be cautious. Why? Because as you said, you are buying a property, you're getting a mortgage, fine, and then you bring in money. The question the taxman might raise, or he could raise, is where is that money coming from, and why are you deducting this? Because you have 2 years to use that credit to claim zero tax. Okay, so basically, the number one is no tax resident. The number two is below 65. Claiming as long as you reinvest the full amount, Michael, because you might end up selling for $1 million and buying for 500. So the claiming is not the same. It's only 50%. Okay, so if you don't use all that money, you don't have. So it's a proportional allowance based on what you reinvest. If you don't reinvest the full amount, you don't have the full deduction. And then over 65, obviously, if you're over 65, if you could prove is your main property is exempt. Okay. Now I'm having cases, Michael, and some people decide, and this is very important. People are relocating to Spain, fall in love, rent, buy a property, and then they're trying in 10 years' time sell the second home, right? And that hurts a lot, because they bought it for £87,000 and now is worth £400,000. And then we have the second story here of, oh my goodness, that was my pension. Now I have to pay capital gain tax. I know there are some products as well as an annuity that doesn't work for everyone, because you might want the money straight away. But that's quite delicate, Michael. So I really think we need to think, once you're relocating to Spain, I know it's hard because nobody knows, but are you going to be selling that second-hand property, or it will be your holiday home. So what is your main property in 10 years' time? That will be your second home. And the problem with that is that you bought it probably very, very cheap, or many, many years ago, and now it's acting as capital gain tax. Other option you have, which probably a lot of people do not want, is go backwards, deregister in Spain from a tax resident point of view, go back to Canada and register back again. but nobody wants that, especially when they're after 10 years here. And so there are specific products that probably do not suit for everyone, like annuities to claim zero. So you could have, if you sell the other property and reinvest into these annuities, you've got zero tax to pay. But I know you don't want the money to be paid on a monthly basis. So it's not an easy one, Michael. It's not an easy one, but I will share it with you, the article, just in case people might want to read and learn a little bit more about options from a tax point of view. Sorry, Pedro, we got very enthusiastic here with the conversation, and the microphone is off, though.
Fantastic. It's okay. It's okay. But we always happens that we are running out of time. Anyway, let me just rapidly to answer some questions I'm reading. I will read from the ones we wrote us at the beginning. It's from Manchester. And what happens if you relocate to Spain and therefore you move to your tax residency, UK, Spain, and 5th of April and in Spain. So whenever you move to Spain, after 6 months, you need to do like we call it a double taxation. It's a double tax document at source that it shows that you inform the Inland Revenue in UK that you are tax resident in Spain. So whatever it has been deducted during that year by your employer and it's paid to, then it will be refunded back to you. So, for example, imagine that you become resident this year, let's say in May, June, and after 6 months, then we do these documents to the Inland Revenue in UK. And, Inland Revenue in UK needs to transfer whatever is being paid in your name, is being paid in advance by your company, and then will be paid back to you if you are tax resident this year in Spain. And then you are declaring the following year. So at the end, the first time, it's a little bit, it's a transition in terms of, you are paying there and then you have to pay here. What we do is that we rapidly, whenever is the time, you rapidly inform Inland Revenue that you are tax resident in Spain, then it's paid. It takes some time, but some clients say it's in 1 month, 2 months, sometimes over that. What we don't want is that the following year in April, May, June, which is next year, as this example, is that you already haven't been refunded by the deduction that has been paid in the 2026, and then you have to pay again in Spain, and then you pay double, even though you wait for the Inland Revenue in UK to pay back to you. So first year is a transition, but it works like that. At the end, you have to receive a money gross. After that, you receive it gross, and then you just declare it in Spain. Or you need to save, and then you need to know what is going to be the payment every year. So you need to save some money, depending on your income, 10%, 15, 20%, 20, whatever. Every month that you receive it, you're going to have to save it for the following year. Questions, writing from Marbella. This is a good question I've read, and it's about golden visa renewals. If someone have a property already with investor visa and now wants to sell it and now buy another one, we have some recently some criteria. Before that, I always been said, you can sell it and buy it and then you renew. But the criteria last September, as much as we know, is being changed. So any conversion on investment between, you have a property and then you sell it and then you invest it in an investment fund, for example, perfect. But the other side cannot be done. From an investment to a property and from a property to a property also cannot be done. It's an interpretation, it's a criteria, which I do not agree. I understand that the rules at this time may accept you to do this, but the criteria, and it's on the website, I think, about the immigration office, that at the end they say that cannot be done, or the interpretation or the criteria of the immigration office, it says that cannot be done unless, those ones who already bought the property before the 3rd of April of 2025, fantastic, good. But those ones who are going to do it or want to do it after that will not happen, will be rejected, and then you have to enter in a fight against immigration office. What else? From Carolina. Thank you, Carolina. We bought a property in January 2025. What kind of tax documents we are obliged to do? What are the dates? You bought a property in 2025. I don't know if you became resident or not. If you are non-resident for tax purposes, then in Spain, you have to report a non-resident tax for the property that you bought in January 2025. And well, at the end is about that. If you are resident, well, if the property is on the system, you have to pay a content tax. And well, I mean, you become resident, then you have to declare worldwide income. You have to report assets abroad which are over 50,000 euros. And basically, I think there's a question. I don't know if I'm answering you, Carolina. Let me answer another question, Ignacio. From Raymond. Thank you, Raymond, for answering making a question for us. I have a Spanish bank account in Valencia. I will need to transfer funds from my UK bank account to purchase a property in Spain. Who do you recommend to perform this ledger of transfer? It says Wise or banks and meeting charges. Well, Ignacio and Michael, about transferring money from outside, obviously at the end is to get the best rate. We have recently, Ignacio, there's a company that we normally recommend as exchange rate. I think Wise has a good rate. The clients we have, I think they are happy as well.
I don't know another experience from Michael, but some clients speak very good. But the problem is when you do the conveyancing, Pedro, is very uncertain when we do the transfers and everything. We've been using Money Corp as well. Obviously, we've used a lot of them. The problem I find at the notary office is when you go on completion, you need to have the security that the money goes the same day at the same time you exchange contracts. And I don't know if Michael had this issue about waiting at the notary office because somebody's paying through Wise to the seller, to the buyer, and then it's not imminent. I don't know if you had that experience, Michael, on completion at the notary office.
What you mean by payment by OMFs?
Yes. Well, some people, at least in this area, they like to pay. They say, no, I want to pay like inmediata, urgent transfer straight away through their mobile. And the problem with that, through the Wise account or Revolut as well, the problem we've been facing is, okay, unless I have the money in the account, I'm not exchanging contracts. So you need to stay in the notary. When they do the trial. I don't know if you did go through this experience.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, we do. Well, the Spanish banks, when the buyer's got a mortgage, they like the OMFs now, which is an irrevocable transfer order done for the Bank of Spain. But it's always a bit awkward, as you say, because you've got that situation where you sign, you put the OMF details on the title deed, and you're all waiting there at the office sometimes for an hour until everything's clarified. I like to receive a banker's draft at the notary office. And the same as when I'm buying and selling it, I know that's the way. Sometimes it's true that, for whatever reason, the OMFs, when the buyers, if the banks, for example, if the buyer's using a mortgage with a company like ING that doesn't have branches, very often they insist on an OMF payment, which is the irrevocable order payment, which is a bit safer than it just like the client doing it on a thing. It's like the bank manager that does the transfer, but it's still uncomfortable. And regarding
Michael, I do prefer OMF as well because the maximum fee they charge us, at least to us, is 300 euros for unlimited amount. So we had a €1 million purchase property, a piece of land the other day, and with the OMF through solicitors, through lawyers, I know you don't get it straight away, but pretty much is a very good guarantee way.
And you can tie down the OMF. Because the money goes to the Bank of Spain, and it's like every half hour, 1 hour, they do all the transactions. So you maximum sort of have to wait around for half an hour, 1 hour, but sometimes exception can go on. That's good. The banker's draft is
the best.
Is the easiest. And with this currency company thing, we've always had the situation where it's difficult to say. What we've done for many years now is simply we just don't get involved. It's a bit selfish, but we just don't want to get involved in recommending a currency company, or if they use their own bank, they use a currency company. We let them make their own sort of, they do their own looking into it. But we've dealt with all of them. In other words, over the years, clients do it bank to bank. Others use currency companies like Currencies Direct. There's a lot of them now. I've never heard of anything going wrong, but I just don't want to be involved in the recommending of all the companies. I mean, now Revolut and Wise now, Revolut and Wise have become really, they're used all the time. I mean, Revolut is actually, Wise isn't actually a bank, but Revolut is a bank in many countries. It's not in the UK or in the US, but in Belgium, it is officially a bank. So it has the security of a bank. So, I mean, we see all of that. Revolut and Wise is what the last 2 or 3 years, they seem to be taking a big chunk of the business away from the currency companies. But it's, I don't know, it's a difficult one. I say over the years, like we deal with currencies direct, we deal with GM, we
Yeah.
come across all of them. And
I
I've
mean,
never
the problem
known.
I find, Michael, sometimes I don't know if you went into this experience. People buying for the latest transaction. We had €1 million transaction. The bank was charging a fortune for the bank's
Yeah,
draft.
yeah,
They were charging, I don't know if it's 1% for just a bank transfer. For a banker's draft. So I mean, €10,000 for a check, I think is a bit high.
yeah. So
That's
I
why
mean,
the old man. Mm.
yeah, the custom of the Spanish banks in general of charging on the banker's draft for the completion at the notary. Um, uh, we did a deal with Cajamar, which is our sort of local bank, and in exchange, we because they offer some commissions. I think we don't take any commission, and instead, what we've done is we did a deal with them whereby on on the issuing of the draft for the completion, as long as the client does the home insurance with them for the first year, they don't charge anything on the banker's draft, because some of the banks are charging 0.4%. So on €1 million transaction, we're literally talking about €4,000, which is absolutely just incredible. So they waive the bill on the banker's draft in exchange for doing the home insurance with them for one year. I don't know if I presume that you've got sort of those sort of deals going on with.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, Michael, when you choose your bank, you need to get all the ingredients, all the facts that makes it suitable for you. Sometimes you're
Mm,
going to start using the one close to your property. Sometimes,
yeah, yeah,
sometimes you don't really care. You say I could open one in Madrid because it's free this time. Or, for example, we have registering through MUP for insurance with us is free, but the problem is it's free keeping the account, but later on when they do the bank transfer is
mm,
limited up to €30,000.
yeah.
So you have a whole bunch of issues. So sometimes I say, what is best for you? And then after that, I mean, there is another system that we did use is Red Pin. I don't know if you did go through it. I mean, Currencies Direct, they're using Red Pin, and the clients use, and then lawyers use the client account. So it doesn't need to go into your client account. It's just a bank account, and they could use it online. You could use it online. It's very efficient. So far, we've used it, and it's very good. And you don't need to use exchange rate, and it's
Who
free.
was that? Who was that? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Red Pin from Currencies Direct. They
Huh?
just launched it recently,
Huh?
and it doesn't cost you any money, and they only charge for the exchange rate if you do an exchange rate. If you
Okay.
don't do it, you could do euros to euros, and it's free. I mean, that experience was good, Michael. So far, what I could tell you.
Mm.
I don't know if Pedro could say anything else about any other, but it's
It's okay.
very individual.
Yeah, it's okay. Let's go ahead with there are a lot of questions. We have like 5 minutes
Sorry.
left. Let me just answer some questions rapidly to Edurne. Obviously, you live less than 180 days. You are not tax resident. You can live 3 months this year and maybe less than 180 days next year. But take into account this word, centro de intereses vitales. Even though you spend less than 183 days 1 year, so you say, well, in general, I'm not tax resident, but maybe you are because your center of your life or your finance, economic, family is in Spain, then you are really tax resident in Spain. Okay. Carolina, normally the tax office, whenever you start declaring the first year, normally they don't check about history, about if you, but obviously if they have some issues to check or some indiciary points, then they may understand that you have been before tax resident, they may check, they may inspect. They have 4 years to inspect, right? Antonio, for your question, I read, the second question is, you declare worldwide income from the 1st of January to 31st of December 2026. You become tax resident. You become resident 1st of June. You stay more than 180 days this year. Then you declare worldwide income from the 1st of January to 31st of December. Okay. And Edurne, if you sell your property before becoming a resident in Spain, do I have to report the Spanish authorities? Well, if you are tax resident the year that you sell your property in Canada, then you have to. If you are not tax resident, then you don't have to. Okay, restart. What point do I need to report selling my property overseas if I become a Spanish resident this year? Well, you need to report if you are tax resident. If you are not tax resident this year, then you do need to report about selling your property overseas. Ian, thank you, Ian. A question from UK. I can withdraw up to 25% of my private pension fund tax-free. Then if I become resident in Spain the same year, and do I have to report that? Well, it will be an income in Spain. And the question here is that if that year that you withdraw that money, if you are tax resident or not. This is why it's important to know whether you're going to be tax resident, and if you're going to be tax resident, what implications have in your scenario. So in that case, if that is going to be the withdrawal of that amount, well, it's important that you do not become tax resident that year. You may become resident, you live less than 193 days, then you do not have to report worldwide income, and then you don't have to report these £100,000. Let's see. Is capital gain still applicable when selling? I would think you answer that. 65 years old and main home, there's no capital gains tax. With these specific issues about if you move, these 2 years that we said before. Someone is asking that can I have a copy of this webinar? I think Ignacio, this webinar we
I did share it. Yeah, I did share. Yeah, I did share. If they go into a website, if they go into live webinars, they will find all the webinars we've been holding with Mr. Davis and yourself. So I think we already have over 100. So, so they're all recorded. Yeah. There are a lot of questions here about taxation as well. I might encourage you, for those who still have questions, to go into a website, and we could even have a consultation through there and get a lot of information through the website. Even our agent Paul, who's in the website helping us on a daily basis. I think, I don't know if Michael wants to. Michael, would you like to mention anything extra here, or they could, if you could provide your email so they could contact you direct for a consultation if they're interested, Michael?
Yeah, and I've put my website up there before. Yep. The other thing I just wanted to maybe a quick little reminder, because people forget. Is that Spain, if you're retiring to Spain and you're over 65, 70, one has to look into the future. Spain is actually a very attractive client if the beneficiaries of your estate are going to be children or spouse. Most regions of Spain now are very beneficial from an inheritance tax point of view, much more beneficial than other competing countries for expats. So definitely have a look at it. We've got lots of information on how good our inheritance tax rules are. For only the region of Spain are beneficial if it's going to be spouse, children, or parents that are going to be the beneficiaries. For non-family members, it is not a good country for inheritance tax. But for those close those close relatives, at least the Valencia region where Ignacio and Pedro are, and the Andalucía region where I am, they are the inheritance tax is very good for those groups. You can read a lot about that on our website. It's just that I always feel that it's incredible that after with inheritance tax being so beneficial in our regions, that the Spanish government doesn't do more to sort of say that we've got this this great weapon to compete with neighboring countries, and they don't make the most of it. So just take it into account.
Michael, could you please? I think you have shared already your website and the email. Pedro, I don't know if you want to add anything else, even though, as Jacqueline was asking, yes, Paul is being trained by us on a daily basis. All the information from our website he has taken. So we gave this opportunity for you to interact as much information as he could squeeze you in. And I'm sure it's going to be very good. But obviously, after that, we can have a video conference, personal video conference, or a physical or a video conference, and we could take it further. As agreed and said, relocating to Spain is very good. It's not a complex thing, but it's better for you to have independent and advice. Okay, don't go with rumors. Don't go with what anybody else is telling you because it was their case. Everybody might be different, and not everybody's telling exactly all of their personal circumstances. Always use an independent lawyer to protect yourself, which is the number one thing and the whole purpose of our service. And I thank you for your time. You're going to have these webinar recorded in our website. You could contact Michael, Pedro, myself, and I'm going to pass over to Juanfran, sharing with you one video and wishing you all the best for this afternoon. See you very soon. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, over to you, Juanfran.
Buying a property in Spain. There are many reasons to purchase a property in Spain. The climate, the food, the culture, or simply to enjoy life. If you already see yourself buying the house of your dreams in the Mediterranean, it is important to be cautious and follow a series of steps. First, prepare a budget and take into account all the possible expenses. Remember to add transfer tax or VAT to the sale price, as well as legal fees, notary fees, and land registry fees. And even if it was love at first sight, do not rush or sign anything. The most important thing, especially if you're not yet a Spanish resident, is to hire an independent lawyer, a specialist who speaks your language and solely defends your interests. Together, you can review the characteristics of the house, should it have pending charges, negotiate a mortgage with the banks, and you will always be up to date throughout the whole process. But most importantly, fall in love with your property and do things by the book. Your new life starts there. Pellicer Heredia, International Lawyers.